one of the things that was really striking was that there were several reasons why the trial never took place. And some of those were sort of philosophical, some of those were constitutional, and some of those were tactical. Perhaps the most important one was the question of what is treason? What is the definition of treason? So will you talk about that?
Yeah, so treason, is defined in the Constitution and again in an 1862 law. Treason is levying war against the United States or providing aid and comfort to its enemies. And so it seemed, the one newspaper said, like, if we can't convict this guy of treason, like, what is the definition of treason, right? It seemed sort of obvious that this was the right charge. What was tricky about it politically was that Davis was going to argue, or it was anticipated, and his legal counsel suggested as much, that he couldn't possibly have committed treason against the United States because when Mississippi seceded, he was in the U.S. Senate from Mississippi. When Mississippi seceded in 1861, he forfeited his U.S. citizenship. And so that during the whole of the Civil War, when he was commander-in-chief of the Confederate Army and president of the Confederacy, he was not a U.S. citizen. You can't commit treason against a foreign country. And so therefore, the charge made no sense. Whether that would have been a successful defense is one question. But from the U.S. government's point of view, it would be a bad piece of political work to give him the opportunity to make that case, because essentially he would be arguing that seceding from the Union had been constitutional.
As it was written in 1787. Is the concept of citizenship actually defined? In the 5 places where the Constitution refers to citizenship, it speaks of citizens of the states and citizens of the United States, but the Constitution made no effort to sort out the relationship between the two, leaving the strange sense that Americans possessed a kind of dual citizenship. In their native state, as Lee called it, and in the Union. This played directly into the larger pre-war argument that the Constitution had neatly divided sovereignty between the states and the federal union. Lee, therefore, had no trouble arguing that Virginia and the other rebel states were merely using the reserved right of state sovereignty when they seceded. And in my view, Lee reasoned, that meant that the action of the state in withdrawing itself from the government of the United States required its citizens to act with it. The act of Virginia in withdrawing herself from the United States carried me along as a citizen of Virginia. But in 1861, Lee argued, neither Lee nor any other individual Confederate could be called a traitor for having done what they did. The state, Lee argued, the state was responsible for the act, not the individual.